This is the Ready Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger. Hey, how was your week, you fucks? God, is it almost June already? Wow! Klaus, you mind cutting that music for me? Thank you, sir. Quick reminder for everyone to hit the like button on our Ready Set Facebook page, or subscribe to the podcast on Mixcloud, Spreaker, or YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the bell and be notified when all of our podcasts are posted to the page. Well, I've got to say, these last few weeks have been packed full of news towards the latter end of the week, which is a double-edged sword for me because I usually have this thing written out by Friday. But the last two Thursday, Friday news cycles have been so packed, it's delayed the podcast until Monday, or these last two Mondays. And I'm sure the last thing everyone wants to listen to is some story that happened almost a week ago. I mean, these news cycles these days are like teenagers. It's impossible to keep their attention. They all hate Trump, and they're so buried into their political bunkers that it's impossible to discuss anything without it coming back to some innocuous social political agenda. So I apologize for the delays these last few weeks. But I want you to know I'm doing everything I can to provide you, my listeners, with a high-quality product. Yeah, and I work 40 hours a week, so there's that too. So thanks for your patience, you fucks. I've got another packed show this week. It's so packed, it's stacked. But Joe, how is that possible? It's like that Jenga game you used to play with that weird aunt you have over every Christmas. Every time it's her turn, you're forced to listen to that fat waste of space struggle to pull the 1-ounce block of wood out of its spot. Sure, in the beginning of the game, she still had her energy, but between the pressure of the moment, the constant motion of moving multiple 1-ounce blocks every few minutes, it's starting to take its toll on your chubby aunt. She's sweaty. The beads of sweat fall down her head like she's caught in a southern Georgia rainstorm. She's shaking as she attempts to place another Jenga piece on the tippy top of the stack. Excuse me. You coyly say aloud, "Is that a cherry pie with Ben & Jerry's chocolate fudge brownie ice cream over there?" The question jolts her body and serotonin levels to the point she can't not look. The fat which hangs off her arms like a Mexican from the wall.
And that's Ready Set Podcast on Twitter in care of Joe Persinger at 420 Chicago Avenue.
Oh, it's going to be one of those podcasts again. All right. Well, where was I? Which hangs from her arms like that Mexican from a wall. Yeah, I said it. Knocks the Jenga stack over with her fat from her arms, giving you the W and her the embarrassing loss as she discovers no sugary sweets exist. You make your exit and let your chubby aunt know it's her responsibility to pick up those Jenga pieces off the floor. That'll burn a few calories, you think. GG, Auntie, don't forget to pick up that ho-ho you dropped, you tell her. Then your phone buzzes. Oh, there's a new episode of Ready Set Podcast on YouTube because I hit the notification bell. But I digress. This show is packed and stacked like a house of blunts that Ken built. Here's what we got on tap for this week. We've got another asteroid update. Anyone else notice that this keeps happening week to week? A Florida man finds a surprise in his toilet, and no, he wasn't at Waffle House the day before. Joe Biden is taking credit for something he didn't do, like the economy. And by the way, where the hell is he? And the lightning round segment makes another comeback, and we discuss why Yingling is probably one of the most underrated beers in this country. All this and more, and don't forget, we still got the staff report. Are you ready? Set Podcast! All right, the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, or CNEOS, is saying that another 2 asteroids have buzzed the planet again. This was on May 28th, so that's earlier this week. So a asteroid named JH8, which is the smallest of the 2 that passed by, basically is slightly longer than 2 average-sized city buses. They passed us on May 28th at 15,400 miles an hour at a very, very close 2.2 million miles an hour. And that was around 6:39 a.m. I don't even remember what day the 28th was. That's how fucking far we are from that. It's probably at least a week ago. So whatever you're doing around last week, this time, an asteroid pretty much passed by you. The other one, which is named LH, who the fuck comes up with these names? JH8? Like, are you really that fucking lazy? I'm just going to take a number and two letters from the alphabet. Or this guy, he didn't even bother to put a number on it. He just called it LH. Anyway, 4 hours earlier from the first asteroid that I just discussed, it was basically, God, I'm really fucking this up. LH is about twice the size and diameter from JH8, but it passed by first, and it was moving about a little bit faster, about 1,000 miles faster. And looks like this asteroid was in the outer lane of the planet, as it was 3.3 million miles out.
Just a bit outside.
So here's a scary side note that, hold on, let's adjust something here. Okay, here we got a scary side note that LH, which is the bigger of the two, actually flew 760,000 miles outside of Earth, kind of a little bit more in the zone, but that was in 1960, actually right around the same time. That's kind of like the time I almost hit that back-spinning kick on Ken, but I was just a little short. You know, it's pretty close. And I swear, this is the third to fourth week in a row we've done a story on asteroids buzzing the Earth. And I'm not going to lie to you, when I was doing my research for next week's episode, I actually stumbled across another asteroid story. I was going to put it in this week, but I don't want to spend 50 hours talking about asteroids, so I'll put it in next week. And we'll probably rant about this again. So these rocks are floating past us like the way water circles a drain. Or it's basically like that fielder whose rocket of an arm is very inaccurate when he throws to home plate. If I'm the catcher and I'm standing on a baseball field and this chunk of a third baseman can't even get the ball into my catching wheelhouse, which we're going to say translates to roughly about 300,000 miles around the Earth, is the equivalent to my wheelhouse. And what I mean by that is, if someone throws the ball home to me, when I outstretch my hands up, down, left, right, that's equivalent to being the radius of 300,000 miles around Earth. Now, if this thing's sailing out 3.3 million miles, I'm not even going to bother to put my glove up and make an attempt to catch the ball. I'm watching that thing sail into the stands every time. Then I'm going to rip my mask off, point and yell to the third baseman, "Greg, your arm is shit! It's as accurate as a Democrat citing a CNN piece." And NASA agrees. Well, with the metaphor at least. They usually stay out of politics. These politicians give them their budget. Anyway, NASA said, as best as we can tell, no large object is likely to strike the Earth any time in the next several hundred years. Well, that's one hell of a scouting report on the third baseman. Basically saying he's never going to throw a ball home. It's never going to get to the plate. And I'm sure by the time in the next several hundred years that these asteroids strike, Nancy Pelosi might be retiring by then. Well, little sports news, not even sports news. D. Wade apparently has no idea how much a gallon of milk costs or what an Old Navy is. According to his fiancée, wife, well, who the fuck knows, Gabrielle Union. I don't know what she is to him. But James Corden, the person who wrote this article, I believe this is page 6. I don't know who the fuck James Corden is, but he's not buying this story. Quote, "I'm not sure if I necessarily believe this. Wade has had off seasons to be a normal human being over the course of his career. It's not like he gets locked into an empty gym each summer and only stumbles out every September for training camp." I mean, I could imagine him being like, "Oh, what's going on? Does the season start soon? It's dark in there." James continues, "Then again, the amount of shopping he's done at fast fashion retailers is probably low. Wade also likely hasn't gone food shopping for himself in at least a decade." What is this guy, a liberal? He's going back and forth here. I don't believe this. Well, actually, wait a minute. There's some validity to this. Come on, pal. Pick a lane. Anyway. He goes on, "Still, I don't believe that Wade is spending his retirement just wandering around suburbia, amazed at how many places just sell khaki shorts. It's a great scene to think of, though. There you are, at Kroger, just trying to get some half and half, but blocking you is Dwayne Wade, Miami Heat legend and future Hall of Famer, standing in front of the dairy section like, huh? A whole gallon of milk is only $2.19? This is wild. I've missed so much." Unquote. All right, so I've got something here. James Corden apparently hasn't bought milk in how long? $2.19 for a gallon of milk? What the? Maybe that's a half gallon. Perhaps this gentleman who wrote this should go out and buy a gallon of milk. And I bet the reason he thinks it's $2.19 is because he probably hasn't bought a gallon of milk in who knows how many years, because this jerk-off is probably some communist vegan who lives on a keto diet, no dairy, no eggs. He's a commie. I don't know. I don't get it. Milk is at the very least at Walmart, $3.50 a gallon. Come on, pal. All right, chugging ahead here. So a gentleman in Texas was throwing a barbecue at the edge of a Texas bayou, was shocked to see a speedboat plow into his yard like a Democrat plowing into Trump's finances. While tending to the grill, unfortunately, I was unable to properly source what he was cooking. I'm going to go with some kind of brisket, but not sure. But as the barbecue man of the hour looks up from his barbecue, he sees a boat jump his neighbor's boat, ejecting a woman into his yard. It plows over the guy's dock and into his backyard. No police report was filed. Someone went to the hospital. I'm assuming the lady who got thrown from the frickin' boat with shoulder pain. And the driver of the boat said he just lost control of it while steering. The barbecue master was not buying it. Quote, "It indicates you're going too fast. That's all. There's no other way to look at it." Well, if his cooking is on point as his logic, you might as well dub this guy the barbecue master of 2019. Moving ahead here. A man was sentenced after his wife disappeared during his honeymoon at sea. 8 years for killing his wife. He says he was sleeping and the catamaran hit something. He wakes up and no one's on deck. She's gone. Yeah, okay, pal. Your wife goes missing. I'm doing the air quotes here. And your boat starts sinking, but you have time to grab your $100,000 coin collection? Oh, go fuck yourself. The FBI claims the holes that were found were breached from the inside and hatches were purposely opened to sink the vessel even faster. Now look, I'm no pro-murder. I'm not for pro-murder, but I think this guy might have found a loophole in the system here. Now, I do remember reading about, or maybe it was a Dateline I watched, about a lady that basically, I mean, I can't say she had her husband tossed off the balcony, but, you know, it kind of looks that way. I mean, she wasn't present. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the minutia of it, but point is, the guy was tossed off his balcony, no body, no witnesses. All they found was a pool of blood on a lifeboat that was suspended and a few decks below the balcony. And obviously, well, not obviously, but because the cruise ship doesn't want that sitting there all week, that was power washed off mere hours later. And case in point, if you want to save yourself some time and money, literally, just get rid of the body. So here in Orlando, a bird attack at Disney World leaves a woman with a traumatic brain injury. She suffered brain injuries after she was attacked by a bird at Disney World, according to her lawsuit. She's asking for $15,000. And basically what happened is while she was walking on the Polynesian resort near a ferry that takes you to the Magic Kingdom, she was struck by a bird. The breed of the bird is unspecified, and the woman is claiming that there isn't a sign warning guests of this possible scenario. Now, what you might not understand there is what that references to is about that kid that got eaten there at Magic Kingdom a few years ago. That was kind of the crux of that argument, too, was that you guys aren't warning us there are alligators here. So they're attempting to kind of take that same argument. And I'm going to be honest with you, Disney is going to pay. But that's really not what this is I'm here to discuss. So anyway, maybe Disney can start, building crystal ball kiosks so guests can plan their days around alligators eating their kids, birds flying into their heads, long lines, $12 for 4 ounces of lobster mac and cheese at Animal Kingdom, or $8 for dried out chicken nuggets. Maybe this crystal ball could alleviate the stress parents feel as Disney starts manipulating their kids' brains at an early age, turning them into these snobby consumers of commercialized goods that leaves these kids in programs with these leftist progressive values, leaving them without the value of a dollar and wanting to spend their parents' money in this swampy money pit infested with commercialized mice, or Mickey Mouse, or Mickey Mice. I mean, for $100 plus a ticket per person, these crystal ball kiosks should be included. Or in other words, if you're poor and you make no money, Disney doesn't want your business. Plowing ahead. A Chinese diplomat made fun of the U.S. government. What's going on here? Made fun of the U.S. government's blacklisting of Huawei on Twitter. Huawei! A Chinese diplomat made fun of Huawei's dominant market position over Apple with a jokey tweet about the company's logo. I think he just chopped up an apple and made it look like the Huawei thing or something. The tweet follows the blacklisting of Huawei last week, but the jib, whatever, backfired somewhat when it was pointed out that the tweet was sent from an iPhone. God, these Chinese always get busted like that. You know, China is so corrupt and seedy, they culturally are incapable of understanding why Westerners find this hypocrisy appalling. This only implies and proves to me that anyone on the left who strays from a moderate point of view wants to have it both ways. The Chinese take it a step further and say, not only are we having it both ways, but now we're going to imprison you and make you think twice about questioning my actions and motives. There are a lot of people in the Democrat Party that wish they could have the same authoritarian power that China has. I'm not fucking kidding either.
All right, so a few weeks ago, Joe Biden officially announced his campaign in front of a crowd in Philadelphia. And which I really found interesting is in the video, his wife introduces him, and he comes out, gives her a hug, and promptly places his hands on her hips, which, you know, they're married, no big deal. What was interesting, though, was right as he put his hands there, right on this, you know, right above her glutes, right in the lower back, she took both of his hands by the wrist and pulled them off of her, which I thought was very, very interesting. I almost wished I had video so I could show it to you, but if you look at when he was introduced, just watch where he pushes his hands and what his wife does with them. So we have Fake News Week, which is a liberal, lightweight, low-selling liberal shit rag, is attempting to deflect and defend sleepy, creepy eyes Joe Biden's handsy nature with women. First, this article attempts to set up the Republicans' pounce narrative, but stops short of exactly saying that. For those who don't know, the Republicans' pounce narrative is the media's attempt at discrediting a Republican, pointing out a Democrat doing or saying something dumb, racist, or both. Looking at you, AOC. Yeah, you crazy bitch. And the next, let me start over. Looking at you, AOC, you crazy bitch. And okay, here we go. So I'm looking at you, AOC, and the See You Next Tuesday Speaker of the House, and the rest of the elite political establishment media. Because that's what they do. You know, whenever a Democrat fucks up and the Republicans point it out, Republicans pounce. So instead of it's right-wing actors attempt to make something out of nothing, my words, of course. It's just unbelievable. I mean, when you have the media in your pocket, you can literally get away with murder, you know, because you can literally have it both ways. The media will ignore anything the Democrats do that's fucked up, and then if Republicans do something that's pointing out that the Democrats are doing something fucked up, Republicans pounce. It's just ridiculous. It's instead of actually talking about what it is, it's like I said, right-wing actors attempt to make something out of nothing. It's bullshit. You're just deflecting. Media. Fake news media. Anyway. So the Fake News Week. Did I mention they're lightweights? Anyway. They deflect Creepy Joe's handsy behavior as a Republicans pounce narrative and play it off as Republicans parroting another Republican pounce in an attempt to discredit the Veep creep. Okay, Fake News Week. Let's discredit Joe with his own words. Last weekend, when he had this rally in Philly, he basically decided to take credit for the Obama-Biden booming economy.
I know President Trump likes to take credit for the economy and the economic growth and the low unemployment numbers, but just look at the facts, not the alternative facts. President Trump inherited an economy from Obama-Biden administration that was given to him.
Oh, really, sleepy eyes, Joe? That's what you think's what's going on here? So in two terms of office with Obama, the economy that Joe was second banana to, It peaked, and I'm being nice here, at 3%. In the Veep Creep's final quarter in office, they barely cracked 1%. Trump takes office and then triples that number to like 3% plus. But the sleepy creepy Joe is going to sit in front of his base of voters in Philadelphia and lie to them that his administration, which hasn't been in office for 2.5 years, is responsible for the economy's growth? Oh, so they cut regulation. Oh, I see. They're the ones that were responsible for all this. Sorry, Trump cut those regulations. Those regulations Trump cut is what was hamstringing the economy. But no. Sleepy Creepy Joe is going to sit there and tell you that it was him and Obama that did it, and that because Trump inherited a bunch of money from his dad 50 years ago, that's what's. I mean, it's intellectually dishonest. And this is the equivalent the parallel I'm going to draw for you. Joe's sitting there saying, I haven't been in office in 2.5 years, but this success we're having as a country, it's all because of Obama Biden. That is basically like being a server and splitting your section with another server. You both pool your tips, which, at their peak is maybe a high 2%. Its lowest is 1%. When another server threatens to launch paper towels into your section, you declare that you're going to have strategic patience. Then, when that weirdo Russian kid the manager hired starts attempting to shark your tables from you and run the wrong food into your section, riling up all of the guests that you've been waiting on, you point your finger at them and declare, "Don't you do that. Don't you dare do that." Or, when the big-breasted bartender gives you a hug, you end up hanging in a rad tad bit too long. But she's too polite to say anything. But that changed when you attempt to come back to the restaurant 2.5 hours later. If you really follow politics, you'll see what I was doing there. Then you two decide to call it a lunch shift. Let's go get some drinks at Chili's across the way. You get a little handsy with the server, and it's time to head back for the next shift. Now the section you had is cranking. The restaurant, in general, is way busier, but the section is now being run by that new guy who claimed he could do this job with any specific serving experience. What's even more frustrating, it's being run way more efficient. Drinks and food are coming out fast. People are spending lots of more money. Servers and bussers are averaging a lot more money per hour. Generally, everyone's a little bit happier. Sure, it might be a little chaotic for whatever reason, but the money is flowing in. But you walk right up to your manager and declare, this is all you're doing. That was my section 2.5 hours ago. Or 2.5 years ago. Go fuck yourself, sleepy, creepy Joe Biden. And if you also haven't noticed, since that rally, he's been MIA. He hasn't been in the public. I want to say maybe that was the last time I had seen him. And why is that? Because he's a gaffe machine. His staff knows if we can just run the clock out, keep him out of the public, the nomination is ours. But again, he's got how many? He's got to do the debates, which the front runner, which Joe Biden is, has the most to lose in those. So I don't really understand their strategy. This just looks like Clinton 2.0, if we're being honest here. So in The Hill this week, there was an article done by Cheryl Atkinson, an opinion contributor, and this is a very interesting opinion that she wrote here. So I'm going to jump right into it. I'm just going to read from it, and we'll go from there. After listening to his views, I told him there's plenty about which to criticize the president, as is true of any political leader. But the obstruction charge doesn't make logical sense. I used an analogy to explain why. When I finished, this friend still hated Trump, but surprised me by saying, "Nobody's ever explained it that way. That makes sense. You should write about it." Thus the opinion piece. Obviously, I don't kid myself that this analogy will make sense to everyone, but after listening to both sides and looking at how the publicly available evidence, here's how I see it. And then now she's going to kind of paint a picture here, and here we go. If you were a person of some authority and murdered someone and prosecutors set out to investigate, and if you spoke publicly against the investigation, proclaiming your innocence and calling the probe a witch hunt, And if you worked behind the scenes to use your influence to fire the lead investigator on the murder case, that would seem to be a pretty clear case of obstruction of justice. You, as a guilty man, would be trying to stop authorities from finding out the truth. So basically, if you were, we'll knock this down to local politics. If you were a mayor, you fucking killed someone, and you had authority over these people that would be investigating you, if you were guilty of this crime and took acts, such as, hey, go fire that guy who was investigating, this is obstruction of justice. But, and I'm going back to the article here, Cheryl Atkinson's words, imagine, on the other hand, that you are innocent, accused of a murder you didn't commit. Not only that, imagine you knew there was no murder to begin with because you saw the victim walking around after the supposed murder. Then imagine you found yourself the target of the murder investigation by a team that included people who had declared you to be their sworn enemy and expressed strong desires to take you out. Then imagine this team that included biased investigators began leaking false information to the national media to implicate you in this crime that you knew you didn't commit. So here's the parallel. With our mayor thing. So let's say you're the mayor and you didn't commit this crime, and now all of a sudden we'll say that the state's attorney brought in a special prosecutor because obviously they don't want to be involved in this. They're saying, hey, you fucking murdered this guy, but you're like, I just saw Greg walking down the street. He was over at the hardware store buying nails. They don't, and they're just like, whatever, we're still going to investigate you for murder. And then you find out that not only is this team of people not only are these people investigating you for something you didn't do while a guy's still walking around the hardware store, it's your political enemies. The guy you ran against for mayor now has a bunch of his buddies on this team investigating you for a crime you didn't do. And then imagine that this group of people starts leaking to the local press about a crime that you didn't commit. The kind of not putting out evidence that says this is what happened, hand in the cookie jar. It's just kind of like insinuations, almost like the thing that just happened this weekend with Trump saying that Meghan Markle, whatever her name is, was nasty to him. Yeah, he said she was nasty, but he wasn't calling her nasty. I mean, I wish I was an English major here. I could probably really break it down for you in a wonky way. But he was basically just saying she was acting a certain way towards him. He wasn't saying she is that. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. Is that's what that leaking was doing. Is the leaks that came out of the special counsel were there to just sway the public just enough because they probably knew they weren't going to be able to indict him. So the idea was, let's just put out these little tidbits to kind of just knock him down off of his perch. Going back to the article. Imagine that this cloud of the murder you knew was never committed hangs over you month after month until it drags on for years. It's distracting you from your ability and authority to do the job in the public's interest. But every time you speak publicly to defend yourself and proclaim your innocence, the media and your political enemies declare you to be a liar and say you're obstructing the investigation. And it begins to look like the fix is in. Under these circumstances, you wouldn't be a human if you didn't possess a desire to stop a potentially conflicted investigation by your political enemies into a crime that was never committed, least of all by you. Since you are innocent, your attempts to stop an unfair investigation could be fairly seen as an attempt to see justice done, not obstruct it. If Special Counsel Robert Mueller is correct, and there was no coordination of any kind between America and Russia, between any American and Russia, then the latter analogy seems more applicable to President Trump than the former. If Mueller is right, then Trump knew from the start that he didn't conspire with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Nonetheless, he became the target of a supposedly independent investigation, which, it turned out, included top team members who expressed personal disgust and hatred for him, as well as a desire to take him out. So that's pretty problematic. Not problematic, but it's having your political enemies rally against you for a crime that you didn't commit and then basically try to use that crime. You know what? I'm actually kind of walking into the next thing here. So speaking of Mueller really quick, what the fuck is this guy doing? It's not a mystery, and I'm going to tell you why. One, he's a never-Trumper. He's James Comey's old FBI boss, which begs the question, did the teacher learn Did the teacher learn the press conference move from his former protege when he basically exonerated Clinton as the FBI director? Funny. I don't ever remember seeing a cop exonerate someone. I mean, did the Eddie Johnson, I believe that's the top cop in Chicago, he never exonerated Jesse Smollett. He basically said, this guy committed a crime. Because that's what he's there to do. Now, this is interesting because last Wednesday, Mueller had a similar press conference. Not like Eddie Jackson. I meant more like what James Comey did. It's not the special counsel's job to exonerate. Did the guy commit a crime? No? Okay, we're done here. But this has Never Trumpers written all over it. Never Trumpers and the Democrats have one agenda that intersects: impeachment and destroy Trump. Which is really interesting because remember, Mueller is still a Republican. So he's not really aligned with the Democrats. He just wants them to do his Never Trumper bidding and is trying to set up an underhanded pitch that is so soft a soy boy could cry about the beef industry and the lack of butterfly conservations and still hit the ball out of the park. Oh, and the bonus? He gets to be a thorn in the next Tuesday's special Speaker Pelosi's side by pushing the radical wings of her party over the top with calls of impeachment. But even though I'm okay with that, fuck you, guy. No obstruction, no collusion. Just an insurance policy that didn't pan out. Google it. Insurance policy. McCabe, Page, and Strzok. You'll see what I'm talking about. You know what that means? It's time for the lightning round, or as Bert likes to call it, the thunder round. This isn't a visual podcast. I can't make sounds of lightning. They technically don't exist. So deal with the reality of the situation, Bert. Anyway, I'm going to... Klaus, give me that lightning sound again. Alabama is investigating $1 million worth of cocaine and marijuana found on the beach. 85 pounds of coke and 21 pounds of the sticky icky. Clearly, these were no longer usable or sellable because if they were, you wouldn't be hearing about this story. A Maryland wine warehouse owner steals $1.5 million worth of wine. Most of these rich wino guys could do nothing but eat the cost of their weird fucking hobby. One of these rich guys lamented that he wished he had insured his precious alcoholic grape juice. Find a new hobby, you dick! A Florida man was bit by a python snake when he went to take a shit at 4 a.m. The snake was taken to a veterinarian and treated for an infection. No word on if that was from the Waffle House the guy ate from the night before. The man still has his balls, sort of, and was treated for minor abrasions. Well, Ben Zobrist has apparently taken a leave of absence from the Cubs to deal with a personal issue. Apparently him and his wife, Juliana Zobrist, are getting a divorce. He filed for legal separation in Tennessee, and then she goes and files for divorce in Illinois. Well, if I had to guess, the pop star probably fucked someone else. Not very Christian-like of her, is it? Yuengling, a beer brewed out in Pennsylvania, in the I believe that's the longest family-owned brewery, has endorsed President Donald Trump. And I'm going to say that's a quality beer, folks. You should definitely go buy a case or two. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's racist, fashion, whatever, the guy who owns it, I believe his name is Dick, and some of you are probably thinking rightfully so, is turning his brewery over to his 4 daughters, and the guy supports Trump. So you could pretty much take to the bank that they will be switching political parties when that guy dies. Nicolas Cage's estranged wife is trying to fuck him, but not in the way you think. He filed for an annulment. Sure, he might get it, but since the crazy lady he wed is a gold digger and doesn't want an annulment, he's probably going to have to pay up to get her to fuck off. California, man. Why people live in that state while married is beyond me. You're going to go broke. Spousal support. Like, who needs spousal support? Oh, I'm just not used to living this. I'm just so used to living this lifestyle. Go fuck yourself and get a job. And finally, MLB parks need netting down the foul lines. That's what's being said this week after a little girl took a ball to the face. No, not that ball. And now the leftist sports media, oh sorry, that's redundant. The sports media is now claiming it needs nets to protect its fans. They want nets going from home plate all the way around. Well, that's fucking rich. A girl gets hits with a baseball, and we're all about building walls and nets all of a sudden. Isn't that ironic? All right, so let's talk about this Jeff Passan ESPN article that was written actually right after this situation happened with the Cubs. Basically, if you don't know, Albert Almora hit a foul ball into the stands on the third base sign, and it basically just hit a girl somewhere on their body. I don't know where, so I don't want to say. Leaving her, upset, crying, with what's presumed to be her dad carrying her out of the stadium into the hospital. This happened in Houston when they were playing the Astros earlier this week. So, of course, the left-wing sports media, sorry, that's redundant. The sports media, specifically ESPN here, writes an article and this one is done by Jeff Passan, this fucking liberal fuckwad. So anyway, I'm going to just jump right into what he says and basically all the vitriol that he starts spewing here. This is the second paragraph. Look at the entire scene. Ugly and awful and entirely preventable. And then tell me Major League Baseball teams don't need to extend protective netting from foul pole to foul pole. Now, a little side note here. Major League Baseball went through this a few years ago. Someone got fucking clocked in the face with a ball. So now they extended the netting from the dugout past the third base, something like that. And, this ball happened to sneak through, so now that's not good enough. But anyway, carrying on. It's time. It's well past time, actually. There is no argument against this. No humane argument, at least. Not when this keeps happening again and again and again and again and again. And children wind up in the hospital where the girl was taken following the incident, according to the Astros. What will it take? Someone dying? Actually, that happened last August when Linda Goldblum, celebrating her 79th birthday at the 59th wedding anniversary at a Los Angeles Dodgers game, was hit in the head with a foul ball and died of a brain hemorrhage. If a woman dying in the stands is not enough to convince MLB and its 30 teams to expand netting up and out, what will? The death of a child? Wow. Okay. So there's a lot going on here. So this, so this lady, there's a few things I got here. When I was young, I remember being at Wrigley Field, sitting in the Bartman area-ish. It was definitely bullpen side, Cubs bullpen side, in the outfield part. Someone hit a foul ball, and it sliced up into the upper deck, and there was a little girl actually sitting, because I was on the lower deck, and above me, you just look right up, there's the upper deck, and you could hear the ball hit her in the face. The sound of the ball hitting her teeth and her skull, I'll always remember that. I mean, she cried. I mean, she wasn't dead. The thing hit her right in the face. He talks about this woman in Los Angeles. There's another situation, I want to say 4 years ago, where a foul ball was hit directly behind the batter into the netting. And, that netting has give to it for some reason. And as a lady was walking, standing up from her seats, walking either to it or from it, she wasn't paying attention, which I'm guessing is probably the situation that happened in Los Angeles too. Women not paying attention. And they get struck with a ball. I mean, you have to pay attention if you're going to be sitting in these seats. I mean, if you're anywhere in foul ball territory, anywhere a ball possibly can land, you need to fucking pay attention. And most importantly, if you don't want your kid to get hit with a foul ball, stay at home. Sit in the upper deck. But don't punish the people without kids because a parent or two is incapable of paying attention during a Major League Baseball game. And another thing. I'm getting really sick and tired of hearing players calling for these netting to be extended. Hey, asshole, making millions of dollars? Yeah, you. When you have to park your butt behind one of these nets and shell out a week's worth of income to pull that off, then I'll listen to what you have to say. You and I both know when you're not playing, you're up in the dugout or a suite, so fuck off with that. Fuck off with what you think is safe and attempting to put... Let me start over. Fuck off with that and what you think, and just keep attempting to put that high thigh fastball into the stands in between those white lines. Okay? Thanks. So ESPN aired the National Spelling Bee, and it ends in an unprecedented 8-way tie. So who's lazy here? The adults? It was literally quoted in the article saying, "We're running out of words to challenge you." Yeah, this was quoted by one of the judges. Were they really running out of words or patience? Think about this. You're some middle-aged Gen Xer stuck listening to other people's kids spell out ridiculous words no one will ever use in a sentence. Do you really think these people want to be here any longer than they have to? They don't! Greg, I'm not sure how much longer I can hold out for this. That strip club down the street has a killer buffet. Okay, we're just going to go an extra 3 rounds here. But 3 rounds later, these little fucks are still spelling right, and they're not even struggling. Damn it, Greg! We're going to be stuck here all night. I've got an idea. After 3 rounds, they determined that the 8 kids to be in a tie and that they will each receive a championship trophy and the full $50,000 prize money. Jesus. Do we live in a soft society? Maybe we should call it the bounty society. It's nothing but soft and fluffy. That accountant is probably, the accountant for the National Spelling Bee is probably committing suicide. So now we're just handing out cash. Oh, okay, so I skipped something here. So basically, what they decided to do originally is, of course, hand out a trophy to everyone. I mean, that's unbelievable. And then they said, we're going to split up the $50K 8 different ways. Well, I'm sure that didn't go over well with the parents. So they basically said, okay, we'll give everyone $50,000. That's 8 times 5. So they just shelled out almost $500,000, $400,000 to these 8 kids. So the accountant is probably committing suicide. I mean, who knows how much cash on hand these people have, but whatever, that's here and there. So here we go. So now we're just handing out cash and trophies to these kids? Oh, go fuck yourself, National Spelling Bee. It's just unreal. Not only are we handing out participation trophies, now we're handing out participation championship trophies because adults are too lazy to see something through to the end, and we're just handing out cash too. Unfucking real. Unreal. Well, speaking of soft and spoiled kids, Martin Scorsese's daughter is a cheap bitch. On top of not wanting to admit she has a trust fund, she would rather us believe that she would only use her dad's influence to get him to have Chris Evans fuck her in the ass. Okay, date her, but we all know that's the overall endgame. Her hipster Williamsburg apartment has a plumbing issue, and the deductible on the insurance was about $25,000. So instead of dipping into her savings or trust fund, or even asking, Daddy, she opens a GoFundMe page. Looks like rich lady wants to prove she can do it on her own, but in a socialistic way. I guess that's a catch-22. I digress. So the GoFundMe she creates gets more press than cheddar, and she decides to pull the plug on the pandering ploy. But here's where it gets interesting. She claims she took it took it because her sister didn't. She took it down because her sister didn't want any more trolls commenting on it. And if she had the opportunity to tell her side of the story, we'd all hang our heads in shame. Bish, what? You literally have an opportunity as you're being quoted in that moment to tell your rich girl skewed side of the story. Twice if you count the original article that was written a few weeks ago. And instead of elaborating, you're giving some jacked up, condescending answer that only proves you're guilty of being frugal. Who is innocent of something and says, well, even though I have the opportunity to tell you what's going on, you're too dumb to understand, and you'll feel like an idiot whenever I do tell you. Shut the fuck up. You got caught, and people are laughing at you now. And if you're wondering, she's a prop master and a film crew member. I bet she didn't need her old man to get that job. Lady, go fuck yourself. Jesus. Some of these people in this country, they could have almost anything, and they're still going to want more. All right, Klaus, let's get to the staff report.
In my hand, I hold the staff report.
So before I jump into the staff report here, there's this Tom Petty debacle that we kind of need to discuss. After his, well, actually, when I first started this podcast, this is one of the first stories that I found that I wanted to talk about, because a few years ago, I mean, I've always been a big Tom Petty fan, but I really got into his catalogs a few years ago when I basically discovered I could play almost all of his stuff on the guitar. And of course, he played, I think his last show was here in Tampa in 2017, or I'm in Orlando, but it was over in Tampa. And I just remember thinking I was going to go. I decided not to. I'm like, I'll catch him next time. He died a few months later at 66. And, of course, due to due to opioids. So fuck you, China. So anyway, his 2 daughters from his first marriage were given equal votes with his widow for his estate. Now, when the podcast first started, in the beginnings of the story, which I was just talking about, there was really, at that point, it was just the wife accusing the daughter of being in the midst of a money and power grab. And then, what is it, about 11 weeks, almost 2 months, 3 months later, now they're both suing each other. So what the hell happened? Well, according to Tom Petty's widow, Dana Petty, the eldest daughter, Adria, whatever. Well, she's 44. The daughter, is allegedly planning to cash in by selling out her father's likeness by creating a brand of Paul Newman-style dressings and cheesy supermarket products. So what would that be like? What would a Tom Petty salad dressing be? Or maybe even a Tom Petty a roll of paper towels? There's comedy gold in here. I just don't have time to come up with it off the top of my head here. Anyway, Dana, who claims Tom wouldn't have been on board with that decision, blocked the idea. So what I mean there is when they formed this trust or this estate, both daughters, they all have a third vote. One daughter has one vote, one daughter has another vote, the wife has another. So really, you only need 2 votes well, I'm not sure. That's not true. Maybe you need all 3 to vote. Maybe you only need 2/3 of the group. Those details aren't available, but my guess is it's got to be a 3-for-3 deal, because if it was 2/3, the 2 daughters would be running the whole thing. So I'm guessing you need all 3 people to agree, and clearly Dana's not going to agree to that, licensing money grab. So that has obviously pissed the daughter off, and Dana, rightfully so, as my guess, would claim Tom wouldn't have been on board with that decision, and fans would be disgusted by such a sad perversion of Tom's legacy. And that was a quote from her. Now, a little side note here, I agree with Dana on that. This is the latest move to block the oldest daughter, Adria, is the catalyst to this situation devolving into a legal battle. So basically, so it started. This is from what I understand, what I was reading. Hopefully, I don't fuck this up too much. A few weeks ago, I guess this is what happened. The Adria wanted to put out a box set with Tom Petty. It was like a 4-box, whatever. It's a big box set, and it had I forgot the name of it, like the All American Tribute or something to Tom Petty, and Dana wanted to kind of put her own stamp on it, and I think the daughter just accused her stepmom of just promulgating like redneck culture or something like that. Again, I'm way off. Now, for those of you who don't know, Tom Petty is from Gainesville, Florida. So her daughter saying that kind of says to me that she doesn't truly, I can't really say that. I don't really know what her relationship with her father was. But for her to not recognize that her dad is, or that she is somewhat comes from redneck roots, she's clearly never been to Florida or Gainesville, Florida. So anyway, the mom putting the kibosh on the licensing deal and then feeling like she was being pushed out of the box set deal is kind of where all this animosity seems to be arising from. So the eldest daughter filed a lawsuit in I guess LA County a few weeks ago, and they're attempting to remove Dana, the widow, and the widow is trying to remove the daughters. So the daughters claim their mom, the stepmom, Dana, is misappropriating funds and intellectual property for her own gain. If I had to guess, that's projectionism on their part. Dana wants one person to oversee the estate and then come to the 3 of them with important decisions. That's what a responsible person does. That's what someone does when they're not trying to fuck someone else out of money or for their own. That's what someone does when they're not trying to personally gain from a situation. And it's just obvious the eldest daughter just wants all the power. So here's the breakdown. Adria, the daughter, is attempting to cash in on her old man's death. It's obvious. If these allegations are true, it's clear that she is just trying to squeeze as much juice out of this orange as possible. If anything, the widow is winning the PR war, and Adria, she just looks and sounds like her last name. Petty. Perception is the reality, folks. Don't allow yourself to look like a greedy bitch in public. Moving on. All right, so this is what the staff report is about here. What the hell is going on with the Cubs bullpen? Sure, they had a crap call against them the other night, but that's no excuse for their overall pitching on the back end of the bullpen. You know what? I'm not fucking talking about this shit. Now I'm getting fired up. The Cubs were in first place. They just blown it over the last 2 weeks because the bullpen is fucking shit. God! The Cubs, like last year, are going to struggle all year with this bullpen, which is going to force the offense to feel that they need to score 8 runs a game, which will push all of their clutch hitting into the shitter, and in turn, the majority of the offense will sputter and struggle, just like the end of last year. They won't win the division, and I highly doubt they'll even grab the wild card, especially with this division they have this year. But that's not what I'm here to discuss. Well, it was, but I'm going to change it up here, because this is really what's kind of blowing my mind. It's 2019, and we have an umpire that blew the game for the Cubs. I believe it was a 3-2 pitch that was a ball that ended up becoming a strike, or was it the other way around where the Cubs were pitching? I don't remember. But they blew the call, and it fucked the Cubs out of the W. And I'm left asking myself, why are humans still calling balls and strikes? How the hell are you going to blow a call like that? Get off your knees, ump! You're blowing the game! Why the hell is MLB allowing human beings to use this ineffective method for calling balls and strikes? We have the technology to literally show the inches that the ball is near the plate. In 20 years, you could probably measure the millimeters of that the batter's pubes are sitting in the strike zone. But no! We can't use this primitive technology that are at the very least in beyond accurate than some baby boomer or Gen X 50-something umpire who's been withering away in the MLB for the last 35 years. Guy, get out from behind home plate, jog your fat ass out to the outfield, and find something to do. We got this thing called a computer that can spot a rash on a mosquito's balls from a mile away. We'll call you if we need you. Fuck off, please. All right, I'm getting out of here. Klaus, go fuck yourself. Get the music going. This podcast is over. I'll see you next week, you fucks. I'm out of here.
Thanks for listening to the Ready Set Podcast. Check us out next week, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and look for us on our YouTube channel, Ready Set Podcast.